I think we'll go ahead and get started. Hi, juniors. Hello, families. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Kelly Frank. I'm the Director of Collegiate Affairs here at Quaker Valley High School. And if you're not familiar with my office, the Office of Collegiate Affairs, the OCA, is right inside the guidance suite here at QV. So when you walk into guidance, straight ahead, you'll see all these pennants up along the ceiling here, and it's a pretty easy office to find. And that's where all of our college meetings take place as well. So stop in anytime. And now that the gigantic November 1st deadline has come and gone, it gives us a little chance to turn our attention to juniors and talk about some things they should be aware of, as you are heading into the mid second trimester of junior year. So our topics tonight will include things such as taking tours, the tests, finding majors, developing a list of schools, how to figure out what would be a good fit. Feel free to use the chat box. I'll be monitoring that throughout our evening. And if you have any questions, feel free to let us know. We've been quite fortunate to have a member of the CMU admission office join us the last few years for this event. And they have agreed to partner with us again. And joining us tonight is Andrew McMillan. Andrew grew up in the Pittsburgh area, went to the Wharton School at UPenn, and has been in education for over 15 years, working in admissions and at a few Western PA schools, was also a college counselor on the high school side of the desk. So Andrew and I have actually led very similar lives. I also used to work in admissions and financial aid for a university in Ohio before I started working for Quaker Valley about 21 years ago. So we are in really good hands for this chat. And Andrew, thank you so much for joining us.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kelly. I appreciate being able to have the opportunity to come and chat with you all, present a little bit about the beginning aspects of your college search. Um, Again, my name is Andrew McMillan. I'm a senior associate director of admission at Carnegie Mellon University's Office of Undergraduate Admission. This presentation is actually a part of what we call our Insight series. So exactly designed to help families and students try to kick off their college search process in their junior year. There's no better time than now to begin that journey, and again, excited to chat with you all today about it. So we're going to start off in the first section of the presentation and trying to describe what people mean when we say fit, right? You'll hear that term a lot, both on the college side and of course from your college counselors and from various people out there. But finding fit is certainly something that is a pretty important part, of the process. Fit really can mean a number of different things, but it essentially means that what your desires, goals, dreams, etc., match up well with the institutions that you're going to be looking at. So the first thing is going to always be the academic fit, right? So trying to find a place that's going to have the things that are, of course, your major's area of interest, but then also is your ability to get a major or a double major or a minor, something along those lines, really accessible? And if not, is that going to impact how go about the process? So again, majors and programs, of course, are going to always be at the top most one. Now, here's the thing. In the beginning of your junior year, the way that you are right now, you might not know what, majors and programs you're hoping to go into, and that's completely fine. But if you do a little bit of self-exploration, you're probably going to find that there's certain things that you're already leaning to, right? And so trying to do that is going to be, an important piece for sure. Additionally, if you're not sure or you're hoping that your collegiate experience is going to allow you to really sample a number of different areas before jumping into your process, that's also a pretty, important piece. I'm going to use CMU as an example, quite a bit, but I also worked for Allegheny College for a bit, so I'll use it as an example as well. And CMU is going to be very restrictive in comparison to a lot of other institutions in terms of your ability to explore and go into kind of any program that you want. We're really just not set up that way. However, a school like Allegheny College, other liberal arts institutions, sometimes some, very large, state type schools, they might have a lot more of an ability for students to explore. And then after their first or second year, then choose which major that they're going to want. So all of those are extremely important. Next is going to be teaching style. Does it match what your learning style is? So obviously you're going to have your own type of benchmarks for whether group discussion is an important piece, whether or not you're really comfortable in the lecture style and doing a lot of study on your own, and then maybe having a small recitation at times. So all of those things are also going to be important, and a lot of colleges are going to be very different depending on the size of the college, and then also, the types of learning aspects that they're going to have. Again, at CMU, we've incorporated a lot of project-based learning, especially for our STEM fields. So it is going to be very hands-on and very collaborative and very team oriented for a lot of projects. And sometimes that's great for some people, but you might be thinking in your head, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be, set and beholden to four or five other people for the majority of my time frame, right? And so that is something that you're definitely going to want to take a look at. Again, I already mentioned about the class sizes. So whether or not, you're comfortable in larger class sizes, if you prefer or need a much more intimate, approach to education, it's going to be an important piece. The next is a little bit, I think, difficult to quantify, but the coursework and the rigor is certainly going to be a factor, right? So anybody that tells you that getting a degree in your undergraduate or bachelor's, degree, it's going to be hard, right? Doesn't matter where you go. It's going to be a difficult journey. You're going to be putting in a lot of hard work and effort to be able to do it. But from within that, there's always going to be, different types of tiers of institutions and what rigor might be asked of you in order to complete that degree. There's going to be a very easy feel for what you've been able to accomplish already in high school, and then also seeing what that additional rigor level might be in the college landscape. Being comfortable with that is an extremely important piece. I'll never forget that in my second year in admissions, when I was working at CMU back in 2011, I was working with a local student. They got into Pitt and they got into CMU for engineering. And he told me that he was choosing Pitt because he was really worried about his ability to handle some of the math related items, and that some of their programs in engineering allowed for students to not have to go as high a level of math as what some of the engineering programs at CMU did. And that, you might think like, oh, well, why would he end up choosing, this over that? And again, it was the right fit for him. It was the best choice for him because he knew exactly what the program coursework and rigor was going to be, especially when it came to math, and for what he was hoping for. So make sure that you fully understand that. Faculty is definitely going to be an important piece as well. How many faculty are going to be on tenure track, that are research faculty, that are teaching faculty? All are, again, are important pieces, for sure. Faculty can have a profound, impact on your, time in college, and you want to make sure that you're again going to be getting the education you want from the type of individuals. Again, a school like Allegheny, they had no graduate programs, so every single professor that was there was really passionate about undergraduate education. So you knew that extremely well, for it. Additionally, you were going to end up getting into a scenario where a learning environment and the different types of aspects that play in with faculty learning, et cetera, can be extremely important as well. And then last is just different types of curriculum. So again, if it's very project based, if it's very lecture style based, if it's going to give you a lot more conceptual aspects versus hands-on aspects, all of those are important in trying to find the right academic program for you.
Andrew, do you mind if I jump in real quick on
Of
the
course.
last point? I especially find that students are surprised at how different, the same major can be at two different colleges. And engineering comes to mind. You might, if you're an engineering student, you might find some colleges build in a co-op experience, meaning you're going to work full time before you graduate from that school while you're a student. And so that's like a resume developer, if you will. But other schools leave the co-op piece optional and tell students, you're welcome to co-op if you want to before you graduate. You don't have to. Sometimes the partnerships of various colleges have with, different organizations might drive whether or not it's required or optional. And the same thing if you're an artist, some schools may require submitting a portfolio to apply or, some type of audition if you're in the theater, musical theater world, and other schools may not. So they're all
Mhm.
so different, not only in their what they offer once you're a student, but also in the application process, which I know we'll probably get into a little bit later in our session.
Yeah, for sure. Environmental fit is also going to be an important piece as well. So, environment can mean a number of different things. Location, how close to home is it? Is it in a city, rural, type environment, suburban? What is the weather like? Again, whenever we have students from the South coming up to Pittsburgh and visiting in December, January, February, they certainly have a much different opinion of what their experience might be like than if you're coming in again the middle of July to Pittsburgh. Things like safety and again the environment of whether or not you're in a very rural type area or in a very urban type area. Additionally, how close you are to facilities like hospitals and things like that. So to be able to make sure that if you have an accident that you're going to be able to get the kind of help that you're hoping for in a timely manner. Additionally, things like diversity. So, diversity from all different aspects of, different makeup of the student body, how many students are coming from potentially international, countries, different parts of the U.S., different backgrounds, etc. How competitive or collaborative it is. Again, it could be completely different depending on, the type of undergraduate experience that is there, opportunities outside of the classroom, the types of organizations or activities that students have access to, and quite easily. I think this is one of the things that, you can supplement better than you ever have been able to in the past, where although you would probably prefer to do a lot of organizations activities on campus, Zoom, et cetera, has made it so that it's a lot easier for students to be able to interact in certain things and organizations across, various areas. Sports, right? So if you really want that large Division I type sports atmosphere and you want to go to games like college football or college basketball and cheer on a team, that's going to potentially play a big, factor for you. And then of course, campus life, housing options, whether Greek life or things like that, all of those could be important environmental, factors as well. Next, fit can also mean financial fit, and this might be the most important thing to be aware of, but not necessarily to make it be the most deciding factor right now, right? You want to make sure that as you're going through the search, you're looking at two of the other areas a bit first, and then additionally looking at the financial fit after that. So, number one, is it affordable? And the key thing about higher education is that knowing affordability is not something that you're going to be able to see by just looking at what the total cost of attendance, tuition fees, room and board, et cetera, are going to be. Financial aid plays a huge part in institutions being able to try to make it more affordable for students and families. But also the different types make it very hard to tell what you're going to potentially be able to get at a school. Things like net price calculators are on the different websites, so you can go there to be able to try to get a good idea about how much financial aid you might receive. But if it's a school that has merit scholarships, right, you might not know exactly what type of merit scholarship you would receive from the institution on top of whatever need-based aid they're able to offer. There's going to be various types of financial aid options. So things that are what we call, obligation free. So those are things like grants, again, scholarships, things that you never have to pay back. But then there, of course, are, student loans through the federal loan program, things like work study programs where it is money that eventually you're going to have to pay back as part of it to again be able to receive those funds into your student account. Deciding and figuring out how much debt, if you're going to incur any, is going to be okay for you. We have some students on our campus who are willing and feel comfortable taking on what we consider to be the max amount of federal student loan debt, which is around 27 or 30,000 for our students, because their starting salary is estimated to be like 115 to 120,000 for their first job right out of school. For some other programs, even within CMU, for students that might not be making, that much money right out of college, it might not be feasible for them to be able to take on as much overall debt. The total cost of attendance is also extremely important to look at, and not just tuition, room, and board. There's a lot of what we call hidden fees within higher ed. And a perfect example is, if you're in an art or an architecture program, how much are your drawing, tools and utilities going to cost, right, for it. And then last and certainly not least is the return on investment, looking at the career services information from your institute or from the various institutions and figuring out that if I get this degree, what can I expect to potentially get in terms of a job after college? How marketable am I going to be? And am I going to be able to incur, again, a little bit more costs on the front end because the benefit will be there on the back end?
Andrew, can I ask you a question about the net price calculators that are on
Yeah.
college websites? Do those only ask for income information for need-based aid, or do those calculators ask questions about GPA and test scores to possibly include merit scholarships as well?
Yes, they can. So it depends on the rule is that every institution that takes federal funds has to have a calculator on their website. How good that calculator is completely up to the institution. So for us, we really stand by all of the updates that we provide, and it's a little bit easier because we're only need-based with our financial aid. So if a family inputs certain information, we can say with a pretty reasonable certainty, here's what you should be looking at if all the information you provide is correct. For some schools, though, that do have that merit component, they could have built out a calculator that helps to decide all of those things as well. And especially when they are, providing maybe more, structured scholarships as opposed to, oh, we're going to give out five full ride scholarships, right? They're going to base it off of, again, what your academic profile says, test scores, et cetera. And then you're going to qualify for, the 5 to 10,000 merit scholarship or the 15 to 20,000 merit scholarship. So it does end up playing a pretty good part in knowing, what the package will be. Thankfully, most colleges and universities will indicate how good their calculator is right on that page, right? So they're not going to want to, force you to do it if it's not going to be all that accurate.
So it's pretty clear when you use the calculator what they're going to offer you, and based on what information you find yourself entering, what types of aid they're talking about.
Exactly, exactly.
Thank you.
Of course. And it's also nice because depending on there are other colleges that even go a step further where they just list their merit scholarship criteria on their website, and they say if you're between a blank and a blank unweighted 4.0 GPA and you have a test score above this, you get this amount of scholarship, right? So it's a little bit of math on your end, but you kind of figure out where you fall and then you see what you have. So it might not even need to be a part of the calculator, quote unquote, itself.
You see.
And so, for all three of those areas, it's important to find balance. However, it doesn't have to be a perfect, pie chart that we have there of a third, a third, a third. Maybe the academics are, by far the most important, and that's going to take up half, of your pie as you're looking through it. Maybe you are a family that has a lot of financial strain right now, and you might not be able to afford, certain schools as well. Maybe again, you're taking this opportunity for your 4 years to go out and explore. So the environment and being a little bit further away from home is what's going to play the biggest part for you. So it's okay to have, any of these pieces a little bit larger than the others, but it's certainly important to at least factor all of them in, especially in your initial net cast for colleges to look at. Next, we're going to talk about researching your options. So, getting information from a bunch of different sources is always great, right? Not one institution, whether it's Niche, College Board, U.S. News and World Report, SCORE, all of the different groups are going to have slightly different ways and takes that they're going to have about ranking, different colleges or universities. But also they're going to provide a little bit of different, data as well. U.S. News and World Report might have a lot more emphasis on donations and how much the endowment is versus Big Future, which is going to play a lot more of a part on, the academic fit and locations of where you're hoping to potentially look at. Niche is going to have a lot of salary data as well to take a look at. So using all of the different platforms can only help as you're trying to find these colleges. What's also great, and what we talked about previously, is you can create profiles and say, I'm looking for a liberal arts school where it's going to be less than 5,000 total students and average class size needs to be less than 20. And I'm looking only on the East Coast, right? So I can't look at anything, west of the Mississippi. And then it pops out all of these different schools for you to take a look at and for you to be able to see. And you can be as refined or as broad as you want as you're looking at these. So it's a really, really great tool, or all of them are really great tools to be able to try and find different areas. Also, going straight to the source is, I think, the best thing once you have figured out, again, a much smaller net, right? So if you have 15 to 20 schools that you're doing a lot more heavy research on, right, to learn more, it's best then to go immediately to those schools' actual websites, get the career information directly from the career services website at CMU. Look up um, the co-op programs at Case Western Reserve University, right, to see exactly what they can offer. And to do that, and usually making a spreadsheet of all of these different factors for each of the colleges is extremely important as well. Because it's going to keep everything a lot more organized for you. And it'll definitely help make decisions a little bit easier when you eventually whittle that 15 to 20 schools down to the number that you're going to eventually apply to. If you do like social media, follow the university's social media accounts to get a sense of what campus life is like, or the big events that are going on campus. If they're close enough, definitely take a campus tour info session. We give ours both online and in person, so you could theoretically be all the way across the globe, log on at a 9 a.m. session with me and get to hear me talk about CMU. And you don't have to actually be on our campus to do it. There's lots of ways to connect with the admission folks and current, faculty or students. And again, just do as much as you can to again gather that information and see again which schools are going to have a lot of the qualities that you want. You might not find that every single institution that eventually you apply to is going to be a perfect fit, right? There's no perfect fit necessarily. But if they have the vast majority of the things that you're hoping for, and you feel really comfortable whenever you get to visit that campus, or when you're talking with students, or getting to see the amazing activities on the social media accounts, that's usually going to be a pretty good indication that it's a good fit for you.
Andrew, is this a good um, part to just chat really quick about the topic of demonstrated interest now that we're talking about tours and connecting with admission offices? Some of our
Absolutely.
families have heard of demonstrated interest. There's probably some people who've never heard of demonstrated interest. Do you mind just kind of describing that real quick?
Absolutely. So demonstrated interest is essentially one of twofold. Number one, institutions will and should say whether or not they do factor it into the admission decision or whether they do not. Carnegie Mellon does not. But if a college or university does, essentially it means that how much you're interacting with them, how much you're showing that you want to be a part of their community and taking advantage of options, like visits to the institution. If that school visited your high school, that you actually went to that visit whenever they came. Again, taking a tour. All of those can be considered demonstrated interest. And in some cases, those colleges and universities will say, based off of what those things are that a student has done in interacting with us, that could play a part in whether or not we might take this student might just be barely below this other student, but they've interacted with us so intently over the past 2 years that we have a pretty good idea that we're going to get to enroll this student or have a really good chance of enrolling this student if we give them admit. This student did not interact with us at all and just submitted the application to us. So we have no idea how much or how high we are on their list, right? And so it can be a pretty critical part. I would say once you know the colleges and the universities that you're going to apply to, make sure that you are interacting with them, as much as possible and within a certain extent, right? You don't have to be emailing the admission counselor every week, at an institution, but making sure that they know that you have high interest is important. And then additionally, things like early action or early decision can also show demonstrated interest, right? Because you're taking the time to apply early. I think early decision is the ultimate demonstrated interest, right? You're basically saying, if I get in, I'm going, right? So that says a lot. But even early action and taking the time at the beginning of your senior year to apply and hopefully get them the info early to be able to evaluate your application can also be seen as high demonstrated interest. So all of it can factor in, and knowing which schools that are on your list that you're going to apply to factor that in can be really important. There are some schools out there that even go so far as to have Google Analytics. So whenever they send you their email and different stuff, they can see how many emails you actually opened, how much time you spent on that email, if you clicked any of the links in any of the emails, how much time you then spent on the websites that they listed on those. Like it can get pretty intense with the information that some schools end up using. Again, Carnegie Mellon has not used demonstrated interest for quite some time, but I can say that the analytics or knowing what students and how they interact, I can see that, right? So we still have a lot of activity in our portals. And so even though it's not going to factor into your admission decision, I can certainly still see if a student's going to be, one that is probably going to respond pretty quickly if I reach out about, an opportunity that we might have.
It's really amazing, especially in our AI era that we're in,
For
what
sure.
they know about our kids now. So
For sure. All right, and then where to apply? So, initial college searches, you can cast a wide net, and it also, again, depends on how much self-reflection you've already done. So, if you've done a lot and you kind of know exactly what you're looking for, then input, the majority of those factors in. And then maybe, if it's a little too small, then say, okay, what's the least important factor that I have listed here? Remove that and see how much bigger the net is cast, right? And you can keep doing that with all of your pieces until you have a pretty large group of colleges and universities to start researching. Once you have, a lot of that research done, your ideal amount of schools should be somewhere in the 6 to 10 range. Now, can you have more than that? Of course. When I was a high school counselor, I had some students that were doing over 20 applications. I would never have recommended that, but they really felt the need to. I would say every time you're doing more work for all of these applications, you are limiting then some of your ability to give the best application to some of your top schools, right? So it's certainly a balance on giving as much work and effort as you possibly can. And again, a 6 to 10, 6 to 12 range is probably going to be a lot better if it's a well-researched list for that. Additionally, having schools in various tiers within that total number is going to be important as well. I used to break it down into what I called reach schools, not necessarily because a student wasn't a good fit for those schools on the academic or test score front, but just that they had such a low admit rate that everybody technically could be a reach at those institutions. So usually if you have a 20, 25% or less admit rate institution, just consider them a reach no matter what, even if you match up well on the general, statistical side. Having some, quality a number of schools, again, four, maybe five, that you have a really good, makeup of what the middle 50% admitted student rate is, where you would fall within those middle 50% ranges, and feeling, you might not get into all of those, but you're going to have a really good shot of getting into all of those. And then also having at least a few schools that are what we're going to call likely, meaning, again, it's never a guarantee, but it's very likely that you would be admitted based off of the type of students that they would admit in that case. And if you have that blend, what it's going to do is provide, hopefully, the opportunity for a number of different things. Potentially provide some additional merit scholarship. So typically for a school that might have a slightly lower admit rate, if you're one of their top 25% of the applicants that are admitted, maybe you're getting the best merit scholarship possible and the best financial aid possible. Obviously, if you put too many eggs in the high reach, basket, you risk only getting admitted to a few schools, which could also be, not the best as well. So making sure that it's balanced is important. Here's the other key thing: the schools that you would end up indicating as likely, they have to be schools that you actually like and that you actually want to attend. We oftentimes will, throw Pitt and Penn State, out there as options in our local area. They're less than 50% admit rate schools at this point in time, so they're still extremely selective and have amazing programs. But what I always say is, if you're not going to actually go to Pitt or Penn State, then there's no reason to have them on your list, right? They have to be a school that you would actually put your deposit down to and attend. So very, very important that again, the schools that are going to end up being a likely is going to end up being your best fit. How do you narrow down your list? That's going to be the key for you. So again, that additional self reflection, continuing to figure out what are the most important factors for you. All of that is going to be an extremely important piece on how to narrow down for you. Which schools fit the majority of your must-haves, and then again, the probable target and reach schools are going to be important. You would never want any one of those to be more than 50% of your list, right? So if you have 10 schools and six reach, two target, two probable, that's probably a few too many reach schools, right? So you want to have those balanced as well. Additionally, when you're looking at the academic side of what the admissions offices provide, what are the middle 50% of the GPA and test scores? And when we say middle 50%, it's a statistics term. So if you think about a normal distribution of admitted students, the middle 50% is essentially the vast majority of students who would be, in that admissible range. So it's a pretty good idea that if you have, your test scores, your GPA, et cetera, falls within that, then that's probably a good match for you. Is it a test optional school? Do they require test scores? How many times do you want to take tests, right? Especially if you might not be a great test taker. Academic requirements, any type of prerequisites that you have to take in high school, and if you meet all of those, do they do a holistic review? And if so, how do your non-academic factors and activities lists match up in that case? Additionally, again, we talked about selectivity. If they're a 20% or lower admit rate school, they're going to be extremely selective in that case, and you want to make sure that you have a good mix of all of the different selection type schools. And then last, certainly not least, is deadlines. So the last thing you want to do is if you're applying to 10 or 12 schools, have all of them be with the same exact deadline, right? You want to make sure that you're spreading out, some of that a little bit. Again, I use Pitt as an example because we have great colleagues over there. They are a rolling school, right? And so you can submit your application, I believe, in August or September, of your senior year to Pitt. And so wouldn't that be awesome if you get into an amazing school like Pitt, even in September or October, before applying to any other early action or early decision type schools, and having, a great admit in your pocket already. Some deadlines are priority deadlines. So if you apply by December 1st instead of January 1st, you might have the opportunity to receive consideration for a special scholarship, right? Early action, of course, gets you a decision earlier without being binding. Early decision is a binding process where if you do get in, you are indicating I am going. And then, of course, regular decision is going to be where most students apply for most of their schools, and usually you get your decision back in the March, April timeframe.
Andrew, when do you think most colleges are going to decide whether or not they will either remain test optional or become test optional for the class of 2027?
That's a great, great question. So, usually I would say they're trying to make those determinations in the winter time right now so that by the time the first amount of testing rolls through in the end of the junior year, beginning of the transition in summer and into the senior year, that students at least have three opportunities to test if they are going to need to. I won't say that's everybody. Again, things can happen. We just had our amazing new vice president of enrollment management, and she is about 2 months in on the job. But already we're talking about that process to make sure that if there are going to be any changes to some of our policies, that we're doing it with enough time for students to be able to adapt for that F27, group of cohorts coming in. I will say my personal opinion, and Kelly, if you disagree, please by all means, tell me. But I've always told students, especially in their junior year, that you should try to take practice tests in both the SAT or an ACT, figure out which one you're best at, and take it once, right? Try to take it once when you're putting the best, faith effort into it, because you just don't know, right? Even whenever, Georgia Tech and the Georgia State, institutions had to go and require test scores because it became a state mandate, right? So you're never quite sure where some of those policy situations could come from. So I would highly encourage you to try it and do it once so you at least have it again. Might not need to submit it to any of the schools that you applied to, but in case you need it, you'll have.
Yeah, there are still a good handful of colleges that require the test that our students like to apply to. So if you are interested in University of Tennessee or Purdue, many schools in Florida require the test, Georgetown. There's a lot of colleges that do require SATs and ACTs. So it's best to check on that. I do have a lot of kids ask me, how will I know which test I'll do better on, the ACT or the SAT? And that's a tough question to answer. The ACT has an optional science section. So if you consider yourself a science-minded student or a student who kind of digs science, you might fare better on the ACT, which is typically a test that is a little stronger connected to the high school curriculum. The SAT tends to be a little more reasoning and analysis with 50% math and 50% reading. So it's hard to say without taking each test which one a student would perform better on. But it is definitely a good idea to have them in your back pocket in case you need them.
For sure. And again, there are free practice tests online to try to take and see which you might be a little bit better on. And thankfully, both the ACT and the SAT have what we call concordance tables to match up. So if you get a 600 on this section of the SAT, it'll describe exactly what the ACT 26, 28, somewhere in that range, I think, equivalency, might be in that case. So you definitely can explore different options for sure. Additional considerations, again, are there different application plans at CMU? Right now, we only have ED and RD. Again, like I mentioned, you could be applying to a school that has early decision, early action, priority, and regular decision, right? And figuring out which plan is going to make the most amount of sense for you and when to apply. Also, again, trying to make sure that you don't have all of your applications due on the same date will help your sanity for sure. Are there different types of opportunities available? So again, I mentioned Penn State, for the Schreyer Honors College is an amazing, place for students, and they have that kind of honor college, opportunity, and it might require a completely different type of plan or application or deadline than a typical regular decision application plan at that school. Um, I think again, the biggest thing is when you're getting that list and you finally have the total number of schools you're going to apply to, making sure that you would be happy, content attending any of the schools on your list is an extremely important piece. Otherwise, don't have them on your list, right? It's just a waste for you to apply. If you're not going to actually go and attend. This is, I think, the key thing that I'm going to say it. It, of course, is extremely hard. I know myself, it is hard as well. This is inherently a very stressful process for students, for families, parents, for sure, counselors and us. We stress over it as well. I actually lead the entire reading process for Carnegie Mellon for our undergraduate programs. And I can tell you I stress a lot between right now and until we get through to posting all of the decisions in March, because it's important, right? We're helping to kind of provide the opportunities for students to go and again achieve their dreams within education. I think the key is trying to understand that there's a lot that you can't control. There are things that you can control, and those are things that you should manage and you should put as much effort into writing and editing essays, making sure you have, a quality activity list that you can be proud of. All of those are things that you can take care of. The fact that CMU is at an 11% admit rate right now for the entire institution is not something that you can help, right? And you shouldn't stress, over that. If we are a good fit school for you, then you should apply, right? But definitely don't place your value on any of the decisions that you receive back, right? Because you might be an extremely great applicant for us and just we weren't able to provide an admit decision. I estimate sometimes anywhere from 40 to 50% of the applicants that we receive are very qualified, could come and do the work if they were offered a spot on campus. And again, like I just mentioned, we're only at an 11% admit rate. So it very much is a case where it is us, it's not you, right? And so again, your value is not tied into whatever decision you receive.
All righty. Such great information. Thank you so much. Some things to remember also for juniors as we're heading into the midpoint in the year. I will be visiting your English classes a few times starting just after Thanksgiving through the rest of the year, just so that we can keep talking about, all the different application plans and different components of the application. But there's a lot of help for the essay here at Quaker Valley High School. We also have a writing center that you can access anytime, which is staffed by 4 of our English teachers, and that's a fantastic resource. In the next week or two, you will be getting an invitation from me for our individual junior college meeting. I will send that to the entire junior class, and I will start sitting down one at a time with each junior. Families are welcome to be part of this meeting, parents and families. So keep an eye out for that email invitation, and we'll be kicking that off around Thanksgiving. And that's usually, a good time for us to sit and chat about what you're looking for in a college and how I can help along the way. So it doesn't appear that we have any other unanswered questions in the chat. I just had a few really good ones. Do you have any advice though, Andrew, on who students should request their letters of recommendation from? What I normally say is two teachers and one counselor is kind of a golden recipe. Should students think about their potential major when requesting their teacher letters of recommendation, or do you have thoughts on that?
Great question, and it can be very specific to the colleges that you're applying to. MIT, for example, does require them to have a STEM and then more of a humanities-based, recommendation. So you need one from both. We at CMU just indicate the two best teachers that know you is probably the best thing to do. It does not have to be academically oriented to what you're hoping to go into. But again, some colleges might really want to hear that, specifically. I think in general, a combination of those things could be great. But again, it very much depends on the schools that you're going to apply to. I think no matter what, the key for all of it is when you go and request that letter, or when you go to have that conversation, is feeling comfortable talking to that teacher and saying specifically, do you feel confident being able to talk about my skills within this? That I would be a great fit for a higher education institution, and actually asking the questions to make sure that it's going to be as positive of a recommendation as you can have, right? That'll build a lot of different things, but number one, it certainly starts the dialogue of what you're hoping that a recommendation will provide, and hopefully, the teacher will be able to give you an honest answer of what they can provide in that rec letter. They won't show you the rec letter after they write it, but they can at least probably describe the things that they would be comfortable about talking.
Excellent. Thank you so much. All righty. Another question coming from recommendation letters. Some students have attended multiple schools, multiple high schools due to moving. What if a student does not have a specific teacher that knows her well enough to write a letter?
A great question, and I think we will always have instances where an additional rec letter coming from a different source or from a previous school, et cetera, is always going to be, completely fine. I think there's a balance between having somebody who at least is in the most, close proximity timing wise of when you're actually applying is a critical and important, but also, again, having somebody that knows the student extremely well is also a balance. So maybe having one of both is again a good mix there.
And I will say, to anybody new to Quaker Valley, your students will be surprised at how quickly our staff do get to know the students, and our size allows our staff to do that. So it's not uncommon for students and staff to know each other fairly well, after only a few weeks. So, all righty. I don't see any other questions in the chat. I just want to express our deepest gratitude to Andrew and CMU for doing this. When scheduling this evening, I failed to notice that CMU's very first deadline was today, November 3rd. So extra bonus points for Andrew for joining us, especially in what is a really, really busy time in their admission office. So a word to all the juniors to try to plan ahead with those deadlines. The sooner you start this process, I always think the smoother that it goes. And don't forget to use this office that's here in the guidance suite, the Office of Collegiate Affairs, as a wonderful resource. We've got a lot going on in this office between our college visits and our essay offers to help and all kinds of things. So stop in anytime. I'd be happy to help, and we'll be in touch soon.
Great.
All
Thank you so
right.
much for the opportunity to spend the evening with you all.
Thanks for joining us. Have a great night, everyone.